Gremlins, you have this suburban nightmare that's unfolding, and then you have, which is top 5, one of my favorite films of all time, The Burbs, and you have the lurking of the Tom Hanks characters and his neighbors. How would you articulate your sensibility around all Americana values, if you will?
Well, I mean, I am an American director, and I've been told that when I go to Europe that I make quintessentially American movies, which I guess is the only kind I know how to do.
Yeah.
And, since horror movies are usually manifestations of whatever's going on politically at the time, in the 30s we had a lot of horror movies, and right after World War One. Then in World War II there was a lot of horror movies, and in the Korean War there were horror movies, and science fiction movies, and then there was Vietnam, and the horror genre has turned out to be, although originally not thought to be very classy, has turned out to be probably the most lucrative genre, and it's outlasted the Western, which is something nobody would have ever imagined. But as far as my personal investment, it seemed to me that there's a lot to talk about in small town movies. I mean, it's one of the reasons David Lynch makes the movies that he makes. There's something, it's no accident that the mother is watching It's a Wonderful Life on TV in Gremlins, because that was sort of the template for the movie. It's sort of like It's a Wonderful Life meets The Birds. It's like it's a nice small town, but even in It's a Wonderful Life, there's a dark side to the town, and it's essentially, it goes into very dark places that people forget. They just think of it as a happy holiday classic, but it's actually a very serious movie. And the idea of the failed inventor hero is very Soroyan-esque. I mean, we were trying to cast that part. I brought in an actor named Pat Hingle, who was a Broadway actor who'd been in a lot of very good range movies. And he was so good that I couldn't hire him, because all of a sudden the movie became a movie about a man who is a failure and wants his kids to think he's a success. Well, that's an aspect of the movie, but it can't be the whole movie. And Pat Hinkle is so good, and he made me weep in the audition. The only time I've ever said to an actor, you're too good, I can't hire you.
Oh, geez, yes.
I need somebody who's a little bit more cartoony.
Yes.
And so my actor was perfect, because he had a lot of personal warmth, and he's fun to watch, and he was actually great casting. But you have to make sure that the movie is that you're serving the idea of the movie, and not just going off and saying, "Gee, I always wanted to work with this guy. Let's miscast him." Every aspect of the picture is, when you're the director, you're responsible for it. And in a 3-act structure, that's a lot of stuff to worry about. That's one of the reasons that we like to do multi-story movies where we only have to do a 25-minute story, because it's much more fun to do a 25-minute story where the success of the movie does not hang on whether you've been able to solve all of these 90-minute movie problems. And in the case of Gremlins, it was a movie that we certainly, everybody worked very hard on it, because we were inventing a technology as we went along. But there was no consideration that it was going to be a blockbuster. We just thought it would be another, movie that hopefully people would find amusing. It turned out that it happened to be for whatever reason, the right movie at the right time. It could be that the very same movie could come out 6 months earlier or 6 months later, and then not have had the impact that it did. But at the moment, it was the thing that people wanted to see, and it came out of nowhere, because it had no publicity, nobody knew anybody, it had 90 stars in it, and it opened along with Ghostbusters the same day.
Oh, wow! And
these are the movies of the year.
Yes.
And Ghostbusters did beat us everywhere but in New York. And we beat them in New York because they disrupted so much of traffic in New York making the movie.
Yes.
I kind of pissed about it.
Yes.
But it was no one had any idea that the picture was going to be so popular and successful, to the point that the studio, which didn't really get it, didn't really quite understand the tone of the movie, was pretty lukewarm about it. Until they went to the preview. And when we had a preview, all of a sudden it was like an explosive preview, and people were like, it was the greatest preview I've ever been at.
Oh, wow.
And we never, we obviously didn't change anything, after that. But that was when they suddenly realized, we can merchandise this movie. And so they put all of their advertising and merchandising together in a 2-month period, whereas usually you stretch it out for a whole year.
Yes.
But they made their deals, and they got their toys done, and they got their agreements with the sponsors and all that kind of stuff, and they did it in record time, and they made a lot of money.
Well, I'm sure. So you brought up some great points about horror. I was listening to a podcast recently from the Toronto International Film Festival, and the podcast was on the new legitimacy of horror. And I was presenting this idea to my students, and even some of the writing that I'm doing around your birthday and the retrospective for this web publication that I'm a part of. And I was thinking, well, hasn't horror always been legitimate? Or why are we so concerned about claiming legitimacy in the moment? What's your thinking around that? Has horror always been...
That's not true. Horror movies were always looked down on. They were always considered junk. Every so often, a top-flight filmmaker like Kubrick or somebody, or Hawks or somebody like that will say, well, let's do one of these. Let's see if we can make a good one. When Hitchcock made Psycho, he did it because he watched the success of the William Castle movies and the Roger Corman, Edgar Allan Poe movies, and he said, particularly the AIT black and white movies, and they were making a lot of money. And he said, well, to himself, what would happen if somebody made a good one of these? And so and Kubrick said the same thing before he did 2001. He said, what if somebody made a good science fiction movie, based on the premise that there were no good science fiction movies, which is ridiculous, but it's a very elitist attitude. But nonetheless, despite the fact that the artists of that nature would occasionally dabble in the genre, it was pretty much considered junk. And even when the rating system came in, horror movies were traditionally played at Saturday matinees, and Dracula's Risen from the Grave, which is one of the gorier Hamlet films, got a G rating because they figured, well, it's a kid's Dracula, and it's got one of the goriest bakings and all of vampire movies, and parents suddenly realized that you have to rate the pictures for not just for the sex, which is what they were doing, but for the violence. And so they pulled back on that, and then they got very worried about violence, and then we got into the whole slasher thing, and how much can we show, and how much do we have to cut out, and what's an R, and what's an X, and all that stuff. But it's basically, horror movies are basically sold on sensationalism, and the more sensational the picture is, the wider the audience, they think.
So
there's a cutoff, because the horror audience is the most loyal movie audience. That you can open any horror movie for the first day, because the horror movie audience will come. Now, you may use them all up on one day because it's not that good a movie, and they'll tell their friends not to go. But it's a safe bet to do horror movies, and luckily they can also be made fairly cheaply. You got a couple of girls in a haunted house and a guy with a mask. You can make a horror movie.
Yes.
Doesn't mean it's going to be a good horror movie, but it's going to cater to that audience. And the problem that horror movie makers today have is that all of the cliches have been examined and re-examined and re-staged, and the audience knows all the tropes and all the gimmicks and the cliches. And yet, that's what they think they want when they go. They think they want that. But if you only give them that, then they're disappointed. Because you've got to take all these elements and you've got to juggle them in a way that seems new. And that's why a movie like Cabin in the Woods was kind of a revelation, because it gave the audience what they thought they wanted, and then it could put it in a completely different context. But interestingly, that picture was on the shelf for almost 2 years, and it wasn't released for reasons that I have no idea. But it was a groundbreaking movie that wasn't allowed to, I think, be as groundbreaking as it would have been if it had come out when it was new.
So now, if because of these tropes, like you said, and this idea that people think they know what they want, is that where horror is finding this more legitimate voice, like a film like with Heredity or a Get Out, or I agree with you 100% with Cabin in the Woods. That was just, especially the ending, really something out of this world. So what is it now that is making horror legitimate? Is it because it rises from this sense of the political? Is it the Trumpian discourse? What is it about this idea of legitimacy?
I think that I think that the political nature has finally come to the surface. It's always been there. I mean, horror movies and genre movies in general are great ways to be subversive. You can be subversive in these movies because it's all under the surface, and the people that you're paying you the money, as long as they get what they wanted, you can say all the other stuff, and it doesn't get in the way of the story. That's fine with them. But now I think we've evolved to a point where a movie like Get Out, which is essentially a long Twilight Zone episode, it doesn't work without the political racial angle. I mean, that is the movie. As is Sorry to Bother You, which is another movie that is a very surprising movie as you watch it. You think it's going to be one kind of movie, and it ends up being a completely different kind of a movie and a horror movie. And I think that's opened things up to the point where the stigma has disappeared from doing horror movies. It's not like you're going to be doing something crappy if it's a horror movie. You can do something that's elevated, because audiences now look at it that way. Whereas in the old days, it was like, that's a second feature, that's a double bill movie, that's a low budget picture, and it's either for children or it's for a niche audience. But now I think you can have these pictures. I mean, that's why you look down the list of Academy Award nominations. You very seldom see horror movies represented in any category. I mean, occasionally there'll be, cinematography or editing or something like that, but almost never have any of the horror classics of the past ever been considered serious movies.